All right, so we're just going to pick right up where we left off in the last little entry there. In that previous video, we were talking about everything that you can do to prepare yourself before you start recording. So that's everything concerned with before you set up your DAW to receive any audio from yourself. We've talked about that, and now we're going to be speaking about everything that happens as you're ready to engage with the audition lines, and how to approach them, how to tackle them, and how to decipher and look deconstructively at those lines. Before you even do just a complete run-through of those lines, you want to do a dry read. What do I mean by a dry read? It's basically having a read of the lines and seeing how they kind of tell you about the context in which your character that you're auditioning for finds themselves in, who they're around, what kind of intention they might have, if that's known to you at all. And basically you're answering the who, what, when, where, and why, if you want a more simplified layman's terms about what you're doing. So who is your character, yeah? Is your character a little boy? Is it a girl? Are they young, old? Do they have baggage? Is there something that they're carrying into the scene with them? Are they feeling like the weight of the world is on their shoulders? Are they desperate? Are they angry? All those things, right? You also want to decipher if that character is surrounded by other characters in that scene, so it gives you an idea of where you're directing that energy to. If you have that character and they're in a schoolyard and you're talking to another character in the scene with your lines that you just happen to despise, or the character rather happens to despise, loathe, love, feel a sort of connection with, and stuff like that. So when are you in the scene? Is it something that's in the future, or is it something in the past where you need to be wary of how things kind of were if the story is rooted in a biographical setting, for example, and you have to adopt the different accents, customs, and other social norms, Just take stock of what's actually being said beyond the lines, and definitely read in between the lines. That's a nice little segue, isn't it? And just understand that the words before you are not simply just a wall of text. There's so much information that you can try to unpack. That is, of course, if the project actually has all those details ready for you to interpret as an actor. So who, what, when, where, why? What is your motivation? What is your motivation? Why is your character trying to get something out of the scene? Are they trying to get approval from another power that be, or perhaps from another person in that scene? You have to factor that in, so that way it helps you emote properly. If you're in the middle of a fight scene and then it requires a lot of efforts for you to, exude from your body like you're being punched, you're doing the punching, you're doing the kicking and all those things. All of this stuff is stuff that you got to consider and think about as you engage with the lines, and you're trying to do it to the best of your ability, so that way the casting director or casting staff can get a good idea of your comprehension of the actual text as it's laid before you in the audition sides. They're also going to listen for your ability to have different emotions and see how far your range is in terms of an actor. You don't want to just be a one-trick pony, right? And you also don't want to just do 3 lines of the same inflection. Just read 1, 2, 3 and it sounds exactly the same all the way through. So you do the dry reads, and then now you also want to set your gain appropriately. So if you have an audio interface, kind of like this one, or Focusrite Solo or an equivalent, a sticker not included. Yes, Amber is my main in Genshin. You have a read of the lines, and you have a look at your levels, either expressed by the LEDs on your interface, or more reliably, you look in your audio recording software and you have a look at that little level bar on the right-hand side, or wherever that might be positioned in your recording software. And then you kind of determine where it is that you want to find as a bit of a normal sweet spot to capture your audio, capture your voice, and you do it to the extent where it's not too loud that you're going to be clipping and losing detail and ruining your takes, I might add, or you're recording too quiet in the extent that you can't be heard at all, and you can be heard if you increase the gain, but then that it introduces a lot of unwanted noise. And what range should you then be trying to find? I would say anywhere between negative 12 dB all the way to negative 3 dB, as expressed by the little meter in your DAW once again. That's generally a good ballpark. It's not the be-all, end-all, but for the most part, for character work that I've been a part of, or anything that's related to that, it's usually going to sit in between that range. And here's a little nursery rhyme to help you. Just have a certain expectation of what it is that you got to be working with. It goes a little something like this. If your signal is green, that probably means that you're all good and everything will be clean. If your audio signal is starting to be yellow, probably think about keeping it mellow, either by reducing the sound of your voice, reducing that intensity or the volume, or even on your gain, you're just moving it down a little bit in small increments. And finally, if your audio is red, your take is as good as dead, because when it's red, it simply is expressed on your interface or in your DAW that you're peaking, you're clipping. And when that happens, you're basically losing all of that detail in which the audio peaks past a certain level. Usually at 0 dB, anything higher than that, you're going to be losing detail. So that's something that usually happens when you're too close to the microphone and you're riding too high on your gain, on your audio interface. Or maybe you're doing everything right as you understand it, but maybe you're yelling a little bit too high. Your space, your setup, and your settings, they need to be attuned just to the right way that you have a lot of headroom and a lot of sweet spots to do all your proceedings. So right now, my space has to be good for me to do both yelling. So if I need to yell or raise my voice, I can do that without losing detail and clipping in the red, as I can see on my recording software. And on the other side, if I need to whisper, and my character is in a very precarious situation, but I can't raise my voice because that's what demands of me of the lines, and I'm whispering to the best of my ability, I can still be heard in the microphone. Stuff like that, you know? And of course, you're riding the gain up and down and just making sure that you're serving the purpose of your audition to not be too soft, as in you can't hear anything at all, or it's not too loud that you're basically just eating your microphone, you know? That's pretty bad, and you don't want that. So now you know how to set your gain. Now we're going to talk about engaging with the lines as well. So in the last video, I was talking about the formats being like A, B, C, or A, A, B, 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 triple C. And I've prepared an old script of mine. This is Barry Manilow's Copacabana. I was a part of this project 15 years ago in high school, and I played the character Enrico Castelli. Now, to show what it actually means to do triple A, triple B, triple C, I'm just going to choose 3 lines that I played back then and read them as if I was trying to audition for them, and you get a better idea of what it is that we're trying to do here and accomplish. So, let's begin. Just forgive my very botched accent as I do this, but here we go. A, B, 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 C, C, C. Too fast for you, Conchita? You never had trouble with that tempo when you were younger. Too fast for you, Conchita. You never had trouble with that tempo when you were younger. Too fast for you, Conchita. You never had trouble with that tempo when you were younger. Yes, well done, everybody. You all worked very hard. Now, I have an announcement. I'm making a change in the show. I've decided to revive the El Bravo number. Yes, well done, everybody. You've all worked very hard. Now, I have an announcement. I'm making a change to the show. I've decided to revive the El Bravo number. Let's move on to the C line now. You're too old, Conchita. Just too old. You're too old, Conchita. Just too old. You're too old, Conchita. Just too old. So you get the idea, right? That was probably like a bad example with my acting, but you get the idea. After every attempt that you do at a line, you give a brief pause before you actually move on to the next one. You don't start instantaneously on the next effort, because it's just going to ruin your flow, and it's going to be harder for you to work with if you need to splice lines together. Like if you have a take that you really like, and then you got like bad ones before and after, you can still splice them all together with your best takes being the final ones that you send off. And that kind of just begs the question, you don't have to do everything all in one go. Like when you hear like your favorite actors back in the day saying, I did that in one take, that doesn't have to be the case for you. Like no one's got a gun to your head to get this stuff out there as quickly as possible. Like I was saying in the other video, the deadline has a specified time in which auditions will be closed. But if you're doing it 5 days before the fact and you're doing it from a remote setup, you have as much control as you want to perfect your reads, you know? You can always just single out different takes that you felt like were better than the others and put them together into your final lineup that you then send out. And you do this according to the requested specifications as outlined in the casting brief, whether that is going to be A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, or triple A, triple B, triple C, yeah? You are also just going to make sure that you're cutting out all the excess noise as you do it. So if you've got a lot of space that has no audio, you can just shorten that down and then space everything evenly in your final spread by like a second at most, but you just ensure that there is a small beat there for you to work with, and it's going to be more pleasant to listen to, all right? So that's basically an idea of what it means to audition for something, but let's speak a little bit more as to what it is that you need to understand as overhead and everything that goes around that. When people think about cleaning up audio, they kind of overthink the fact that, it has to be precise. And yes, it does have to be precise, but it also doesn't have to be like convoluted with all the different layers of post-processing. The purpose of cleaning up your audio is that you're just removing the artifacts which are going to be distracting from your final takes that you send off. The purpose of post-processing is not to make the sound so unnatural, so refined that it's almost robotic, and it's not an accurate representation of your voice then, because you've got all the different filters on there which are unnecessary. Maybe you've got a noise gate which is cutting out and clipping all of the detail on a certain surface of your audio. And maybe you've normalized something incorrectly and then ran into problems when the master conflicts with your intentions of what you're trying to send out. So don't post-process excessively, and the general rule of thumb is the casting directors would always want the raw audio for the most part, so that way if they somehow hire you or they want to test the different levels within their own software, they're able to have your audio in a very malleable way. They can shape it, manipulate it, they can apply their own settings without actually having all this extraneous data that is messing up with their intention. So keep it raw, keep it clean, and keep it tidy, but don't do all the unnecessary stuff that you might be convinced is required of you, all right? So that's a long little passage there. Went off on a bit of a tangent, but hopefully you took something away from that. So in terms of performance, like you just saw me before just giving a rough stab at like a script, you want to give it your all. You want to exemplify the different inflections, different emotions, and you want to make sure that you're demonstrating your ability to interpret the script, insert a certain degree of emotion that's varied in line with what's specified with the character. Like, is the character snotty-nosed brat? Are they condescending? Are they pitiful? Are they downtrodden? All these different things. And when you actually read those lines, you simply aren't just reading the text. Like, you're inserting the acting. You have to act. This is voice acting. Like, if you're not good at acting, you definitely need to train up a little bit or get better at, just reading stuff and in making life out of the thing. It's essentially being believable as that part is basically all I'm trying to say. Because more often than not, when you listen to different auditions, or possibly like when you first started and it took you a long time to get to where you were, you're just like, oh, yeah, I can understand that this is a little bit of a dry read and maybe I could have done that better, you know? And also just a bit of a reminder that it doesn't matter if you're a great actor or actress. If you have a suboptimal setup, it's probably going to hinder your performance. And if it's a toss-up between having 1 month to be a person that doesn't have any acting pedigree or skill, or being tethered to a setup that is just subpar, it doesn't sound good, what do you think would be the most valuable option? I'll give you a second to think about that. Sorry, I just wiped the sweat off my brow. It's hot in here. Yeah, so the answer that I would go for is 1 month, those two problems in this dilemma. I would rather be someone that lacks any real acting ability for 1 month rather than be someone who actually lacks the infrastructure to produce good sound, because in the span of 1 month, you can level up so much simply by listening, by training, and by practicing. Whereas if you have a suboptimal setup, let's say that you just went on eBay or Amazon and then you just saw one of these and you're like, oh, I can do voice acting now, it's going to be accessible. And then you realize that this generic mass-produced microphone has a terrible noise floor and a really high self-noise level as opposed to the other prosumer mics. Or perhaps you're just recording in a space that's like very reverberant. It's going to hinder your progress, and I don't want that for you. And all the same, it's something that everyone needs to actually come to terms with should they want to take this further. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say about the performance side of things. It's a lot of trial and error, to be sure, and a lot of practice that goes into that. But you just keep at it, and even if there's a lot of times where you feel like you're having a drought with work or you feel like you're not getting anywhere, just keep yourself busy, keep reading, keep auditioning, keep trying, keep failing, because you will succeed as long as you keep that sword pretty sharp, right? That sword being an analogy for your skill level. If it goes rusty and you become someone that's a little bit complacent, you're resting on your laurels, when that opportunity does come, you're going to be unable to unsheath your sword because it's rusted, you know? So yeah, that's another bit of a tangent there. But let's talk about what you do when you actually submit your files then to the client or website. Casting Call Club, I'll use that as a bit of an example. It's a unique site in which you can actually hear other people's auditions for better or for worse. But there's also like a little dialogue box that you can present alongside your audition. You can put some additional information there. You don't want to go overboard with that information that you upload alongside the audition. You want to demonstrate your ability, not talk about it. And what do I mean by that? Your audio file needs to be something that kind of stands on its own as a bit of a statement to describe your ability to perform well and to be considered. You don't want to be like, overstating your ego or your importance or anything like that. No one cares about how you address yourself or how you want people to call you. People aren't really concerned with how much experience you have or how many projects you are currently a part of. Because if you do all that stuff, it ends up being like a long wall of text, a long paragraph of irrelevant information, Most casting directors only care about how you sound and how your space sounds, and if you are suitable for the role. With all that extra stuff, it's kind of something that could lend itself to being perceived in many different ways, not simply by other talent, but more importantly by people who are going to be looking to cast you. You just don't want to come off as someone that's immature, overly vain, desperate for work, self-absorbed to the extent where, you're saying that you're working for different projects at the current point in time. But if you do that, it also raises the possibility of scheduling conflicts, which will weigh on the mind of someone that wants to cast you. So when you set all the expectations inadvertently like that, you best be able to deliver, because the last thing that you want to do is appear good with all that information that you provide without actually being good, That's just a cautionary tale that I'd like to share with everyone else that's kind of in that opportunity and in that space where that is a norm, and other people can see that and they're just like, is this person going to be okay to work with, or are they just like, full of passion, And passion is good. You just don't want it to hinder all your efforts simply because you think it's necessary. But yeah, I think that's going to come to a close with everything that I wanted to divulge to anyone that's kind of new or everyone that's at the same level and point that I am. Hopefully you found this reasonably useful, and I encourage you to keep on doing what you're doing. Embody any useful information that you found in these 2 videos now, and just keep on auditioning. You know, you're only going to get better in time. You're only going to get better with everything that you attempt out there. And people are going to hear you for better or for worse. But if they are hearing you, you best make the best impression that you can and be the best version of every single character and read that you think to tackle out there. So let me hear what you're about. Go out there, audition, do your thing, make it great. I wish you all the best of luck. Any questions at all, feel free to put them in the comments section of any of these videos. And yeah, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe and do all those nice things. If you feel that these videos did not help you at all, or you just simply didn't like what was said in them or found them not helpful, just hit the dislike button as well. That's free real estate, and it's definitely not going to hurt my feelings, all right? But that's everything. I've kind of prattled on for too long. I wish you the best of luck, and yeah, see you around.